Hello, and welcome to this video that will be part 1 of this Hockey Basics series. I'm Mario in Black, and today I hope to teach you some of the very basic things in hockey from a PWHL specific perspective. A lot of items here will overlap with other leagues, but I'm targeting someone watching the PWHL with this presentation. There will be a few quirks here and there that won't apply to other leagues that will apply to the PWHL specifically, just so that you're aware. I hope you can learn something from this. The only way to truly learn is through watching the games themselves, but I hope you can pull something from this video that gives you a level of understanding, or at least a little bit of a foundation. So when you watch a game, you can see an event that happens and think back to this video and be like, oh yeah, that's what he meant by that. That's what Mario meant by that. So that's my goal for this. I don't know how long this series is going to go. Right now I have enough for 2 parts, but there's a million things to talk about. And as with all videos, if you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them below. But let's get into the video. Alright, let's start with the very basics. Games are divided into 3 20-minute segments called periods. These periods have 2 17-minute intermissions in between. There's 3 TV timeouts per period, and games will generally hover at about 2.5 hours total from the first puck drop to the final horn. Teams switch end after each period. Teams attack the same end in the first and third periods and will attack the opposite end in the second period. The players do not move between benches, so in the first and third period the bench will be on the defending half of the ice, while in the second period the bench will be on their attacking half of the ice. Each team has 5 skaters and 1 goalie on the ice, so they have 6 players total during normal regulation play. This is also called full strength to signify that teams have their full complement of players on the ice and are not down a player due to a penalty. If a game goes to overtime, then there's 3 skaters plus the goalie for the 5-minute overtime frame. Overtime is sudden death, so a goal in overtime will end the game. In the playoffs, overtime is still sudden death, but it's 5 skaters aside just as in regulation. In playoff overtime, there are 20-minute periods, and they keep going until someone scores. If nobody scores, they just reset for another 20 minutes and keep going until the game ends. If no one scores in overtime, the game goes to a shootout. Teams alternate skaters to take a shot on the opposing goalie. There's 5 rounds, and whoever scores the most goals in those shootout rounds wins. As mentioned earlier, since there's 20-minute overtimes in playoffs, and they keep going until someone scores a goal, that means there's no shootouts in the playoffs. Rosters have 23 players on them. 20 of those players are skaters, and there's 3 goalies. Next week I'll have a little bit more roster-related talk in that presentation. Alright, here's a very basic look at a hockey rink. It's not quite perfect. I did my best to find one in color, and I'll go over the different parts of the rink. The top and bottom of this shows which direction each team is attacking. So Team A is attacking left to right. Team B is attacking right to left. This will be more important in a couple slides. First thing I wanted to add were things that were not included in the diagram I found. At the top are the team benches. This generally includes a tunnel for the players to come out and go back in to their locker room areas as well. It's where the players who are not playing at a given moment sit. It's also where the coaching staff is. Benches have a low board separating themselves from play, as well as a couple of doors. Players will hop over the boards, and they'll go through the doors when replacing other players during play. At the bottom is the timekeepers area and the penalty boxes. The timekeepers area is in the middle, and the penalty boxes are on either side of that area. The penalty boxes are for players serving penalties. The timekeepers area is where the off-ice officials sit, who keep score, time, and are basically the administrative side of a given game. These are the people who act as liaisons between the officials on the ice and the situation room in the league office for reviews, as well as the arena itself, so they can communicate to the officials any information they have, as well as the officials can communicate information going the other way. So they're basically the middlemen in the entire process. The entire area is protected by boards and a high glass, so they're less at risk of stray pucks. I also put the nets on each side of the ice. They weren't really included in the diagram, but for reference, they're behind the semicircles you see there, which are called the creases. So I'd like to talk about the boards which surround the perimeter of this diagram. The boards are a wall that surrounds the rink. The wall is fairly short, and above the boards are plexiglass that surrounds the rink as well. The plexiglass itself is often just called glass. These make up the barriers of the rink. The glass covers the entire rink except the area in front of the team benches. Those are the only areas where there's no high plexiglass above the boards. Now for the three important lines. I'll start with the center red line. The red line is located at the rink's halfway point. It divides the surface of the ice in half. The red line in the current game only really comes into play for icing calls, which I'll go over later. The red line is also sometimes called the checkered line as well, as red lines are often not a solid red color. This was initially done to help distinguish the red line from the blue lines on TV broadcast. Speaking of blue lines, next up are those. There's two located on each side of the red line. The blue lines are always solid blue, and they mark the divisions of the three zones: offensive, neutral, and defensive. I've got a slide mapping those out here in a bit. The blue lines come into play a lot more as their determining factor on if a team is offside or not when they enter the zone. They're probably the most important line to know about. The last line I like to talk about are the goal lines. There's two of these, and they're located at each end of the ice, kind of toward the end boards. They're painted red, and unlike in this diagram, they're a lot thinner than the center red line. And while they are red, the center red line is typically the only line called the red line. These lines near the end boards are known as the goal line, just to help prevent confusion. At the center of each goal line is the net. This is where each attacking team is trying to get the puck in order to score goals. There's also space behind the goal line and behind the net as well, where players can roam. All right, moving on to some additional areas of the ice. First are the face-off dots. There's 9 of them total on the ice. The 4 you can see in the center, the 4 within the circles on each end of the ice, and the blue one at the very dead center of the ice along the red line. Every play must start with a face-off, whether when there's a stoppage in play, a period starts, a goal scored. It always starts with a face-off in one of these dots. Speaking of the circles, those are called face-off circles. There's 2 on each side of the ice. The circles and the markings within them have a few specific rules associated with them, mostly for icing, which I'll discuss in the future. They're mainly used for teams to draw up plays and give a frame of reference to where certain plays are set up and where players should be on play. They're also used when I'm lining up for face-offs and to kind of position players on those plays as well. Next up is the goal crease. There's 1 on each side of the ice in front of each net. They're typically painted blue, and this is the goalie's areas for each team. Goalies can play outside the crease, but you'll mostly find them in this area defending their own net. I wanted to quickly point out the officials' crease as well. It's adjacent to the timekeeper's area. During play it has no significance, but during stoppages, officials will sometimes gather here to discuss things on the ice and also talk to the off-ice officials from the spot. There's also a lot of nicknames for areas on the ice, but I wanted to highlight what I think are the 2 most common. First is the slot, which is the space between the circles. Teams try to get into the slot because it's a very good spot to try to score from. This is a heavily defended area of the ice as well, especially as you get closer to the goalie's net within the slot area. I also want to highlight the point, which is the space between the blue line and the edges of the circles. The point is typically defended less than what the slot is because it takes longer for shots to get there to the goalie, which usually gives it a higher likelihood of being saved. Offensive teams will use the point, though, to pass around, and if they'll shoot from the point sometimes if there's players that might be impeding the goalie's view, and it gives them a better chance to score or make a productive play that can lead to a score. You typically hear about the point during the game a lot. Announcer might say, that this player's passing it to the point, or they're shooting it from the point. So I wanted to highlight this just because it's a very, very common term used during games. Next up, I'd like to talk about the 3 zones. So we're going to ignore Team B here and look at Team A, who's attacking from left to right. The leftmost zone on this graphic is the defensive zone. It's the zone where Team A's goalie sits, and it's where they try to defend their own net and prevent goals from going in. This is bordered by the blue line on this side, which is often called the defensive blue line to differentiate itself from the other blue line. The center zone is called the neutral zone. It's the space between the two blue lines, and it's the smallest zone by area. It's a space where neither team has a net to defend. Activity in the neutral zone is often a team skating from their defensive zone in order to go on the attack. These are often called transition plays. Finally, there's the offensive zone, which is often called the attacking zone. It's a mirror image of the defensive zone, and instead of the zone where you're defending and trying to prevent goals, it's the zone where you're attacking and trying to score goals. So these are the three zones, and knowing these terms is a very good start to learning the sport. The defensive, neutral, and offensive zone are all divided by the two blue lines. When the period changes, the zones will reverse for Team A, and they'll attack toward the other end. All right, now that we know about the zones, let's talk about the players and the positions. First three are the center, the left wing, and the right wing. And this group collectively are known as forwards, and they're typically more attacking players. The way hockey is played, it's not always that, the left wing is going to be on the left side and the center is going to be in the middle. The three positions will often mix it up while attacking. They do stick to the structure a bit more in the defensive zone. The center typically takes face-offs and covers the most space of any players. They typically have an equal responsibility offensively and defensively, making a very good center a valuable commodity. The wings are, as they're known, wingers, typically focus more on offense and don't do as much defensively, but will guard the opposing team's defenders near the point. These are all variable depending on the teams, their philosophies, and the players on the ice, and the players' specific skill sets, but these are the traditional roles of the three forward players. Teams will often have the three players in a group, so it's the same three individuals with each other, and those groups are called lines. Next up, there's the left defender and the right defender, and these are collectively known as the defense. These players don't focus on the offensive game quite as much. They're meant to tie up and defend opposing players trying to get to their goalie. In the offensive zone, these players typically play near the point. In the defensive zone, they typically play near the goal line and protect the goalie in the adjacent area. Collectively, the two defenders on the ice are known as a defensive pair. All five of these players, the forwards and the defense, are known as skaters. This is to differentiate themselves from the final position on the ice, the goalie. The goalie is to make sure that pucks don't get past them and into the net. They're heavily padded since pucks are pretty hard and they can move pretty quick. Goalies stick to the crease, but they can come out of the net and make plays on the puck outside the crease in order to help out their team, get the play moving along, and help out their defenders. All right, next I want to get to some common events that you'll see in just about any game you ever watch. First up are line changes. A lot of sports only allow for substitutions during breaks in play, but in hockey you can change players during the course of play, which is often called changing on the fly. Players will be on the ice for what are called shifts that are generally 30 to 45 seconds, but can last shorter or longer depending on the circumstances. The forward group is typically changed as a unit, and the defensive pair are changed as a separate unit as well. As mentioned in the last slide, forward lines and defensive players typically play together, but can be mixed and matched during the course of a game, and depending on how the coach wishes to play given the events of the game. Next up, I want to talk about stoppages. Anytime a whistle blows, there's a stoppage in play, and play must be restarted with a face-off. The first I'm going to talk about is icing. Icing is when you shoot the puck from your defensive half of the ice, so behind your red line, and it goes all the way down past the other team's goal line, and that other team is the first to kind of skate back and get to those hash mark areas I was talking about earlier in the face-off circles. In this case, the play will be blown for icing. The face-off will come all the way back next to your own goalie, and you cannot change your personnel on the ice. I also want to talk about offside. Offside is when a player enters the offensive zone, so the attacking zone, before the puck crosses the blue line into the attacking zone. A player can have, half their body on one side of the line or the other. They can even have a toe on the blue line or even a part of their skate blade above the blue line. But if their full body is into that attacking zone, and then the puck enters and fully crosses the blue line, then the play is blown down for offside, and the face-off will come back to either the neutral zone or the defensive zone, depending on where the pass originated from to start the offside play. These are both pretty, I wouldn't say complicated, but they need to be watched, understood. I'm going to have a big video on these two specific rules in the future to try to help people understand it a little bit more, because knowing them gives you a huge leg up. They're very common in every game, and they can be pretty confusing for new fans. A goalie stoppage is when a goalie covers the puck and the referee blows the play dead. This is often called freezing the puck as well. This results in a face-off in one of the circles adjacent to the goalie that stopped the play. The puck going out of play is just what it says, the puck going over the boards and leaving the playing surface. This also counts if the puck ends up in a bench or if the puck hits the large netting above the glass at each end of the rink. So behind the goal, there's two large nets that are there to protect fans, and if a puck hits one of those nets, the puck is considered out of the play. So I want to talk about a hand pass too. A hand pass is whistled whenever a player gloves the puck down out of the air and their teammate is the next player to touch the puck. It's a pretty common player that a player will, reach into the air, knock the puck down with their glove, and then continue playing the puck. As long as that player is the next person to touch the puck after it hits their glove, or the opposition touches the puck next, then play will continue going on as normal. However, if one of the player's teammates touches the puck next, then the play will be whistled down for a hand pass, and a face-off will happen. In the defensive zone, there are no hand passes, so you can glove the puck to a teammate as long as it starts and ends in the defensive zone, but in any other circumstance, there will be a whistle blown and play will stop. Something I want to touch on real quick is whistles for high sticks. If you contact the puck at a level above your shoulder, and then either you or your teammate is the next to touch the puck, the play will be whistled down for a high stick. This is not like a hand pass where you can continue playing the puck yourself if you knock the puck down. With a high stick, if your team, including yourself, touches the puck next, then the play will be whistled down. All right, next up I want to hit on the penalties. These are quite common and they're very important to the game since they lead to a player advantage for one of the two teams. Penalties are split into minor and major penalties. Minor penalties are far and away the most common kind of penalty, and they're 2-minute infractions where the offending player sits in the penalty box and their team plays down a player until time expires on the penalty or a goal is scored. Major penalties are 5-minute penalties reserved for severe infractions like hits to the head. These can often lead to player ejections and disciplinary action. These players do not end until the 5-minute elapse, even if a goal is scored. Major penalties are typically reviewed by the referees in the central situation rule at the league office to determine whether they should be a major penalty or not, given the severity of those infractions. When a penalty happens, play doesn't stop until the team that committed the penalty possesses the puck or another stoppage occurs. So if the team has the puck and the other team commits a penalty, they can continue playing until the other team gets a hold of the puck and stops play. If that team scores a goal during that time that they're kind of playing keep away from the other team that committed a penalty, then the penalty is negated and the goal counts. The team that is up a player is on the power play, and the team that is down the player is on what's called the penalty kill, or they're short-handed. Any goal scoring during a 2-minute minor penalty ends the penalty. When the power play team scored, it's called a power play goal, and the penalty ends, player comes out of the box. When the short-handed team scores, in the PWHL specifically, it's called a jailbreak goal, and the penalty ends as well. The jailbreak is unique to the PWHL, since when the shorthanded team scores in other leagues, the player typically stays in the box. But in the PWHL, teams are given the chance to break their teammate out of the box whenever they score a goal down a player. That's why it's called a jailbreak. The team on the penalty kill cannot be called for icing. So whenever they have the puck, they can shoot the puck down as they please to try to kill some of that power play clock. This is often called clearing the puck. However, the shorthanded team does have to keep the same players that were on the ice when the penalty was committed on that very first face-off that starts the opposing team's power play. This is called the no escape rule in the PWHL, and it's a rule unique to the league. So once that power play starts for the team on the penalty kill must keep the players that were out there when the penalty happened. However, once the puck drops, they can substitute as they please or and when they deem fit. All right, now I'd like to go over some of the most common penalties. There's more than on this list, and I'm briefly going to go over each of them. Expect a deeper dive on some of these in a future video, but I wanted to give you a base level of understanding on some of the most common ones. So holding is basically grabbing another player and restricting their movement. Hooking is using your stick to restrict an opponent. Tripping is using a stick or another body part to cause an opponent to trip. High sticking is having your stick hit someone in the head or neck area. Interference is making contact or impeding someone who's not possessing the puck. You can make contact on a player with the puck, but players without the puck are free to roam without that contact. If you do make contact on them, you risk having an interference penalty called. An illegal check is making heavy contact to another player where the goal was to clearly make that heavy contact and not to make a play on the puck. This rule is probably the hardest of all the rules to determine in real time. Checking or hitting someone is legal in the PWHL, but it has to be in service of playing the puck. Even seasoned fans that have been around for a while can have a difficult time determining whether something is an illegal check or not. Cross-checking is hitting someone with your stick. You typically see this when a player has their hands spread out on their stick and hits someone with the shaft of their stick. Slashing is hitting someone, with the stick. It's usually they'll kind of, whack them over the hands or break the opponent's stick by whacking the stick. Delay of game is if you're in your defensive zone, you can't shoot the puck out of the play over the glass. This is a penalty. Roughing, typically called when someone's throwing a hit or punch for no good reason. And too many women. It's a penalty that's exactly as it sounds when you have too many players on the ice. So when substitutions happen during the game, you'll see a player come off the ice and then a player come on the ice for them. There's usually a bit of a gray zone where the player coming off the ice might be on the ice the same time as the player coming on. However, the player that enters the ice cannot make a play on the puck or otherwise until the player they're substituting for is fully off the ice. If that does happen, then it'll be a too many women penalty. So this is not the full list of penalties. There's a ton more than what I've listed here, probably more than double of what I've listed here. But they're the most common ones from what I've seen. There's quite a few penalties that are very uncommon. You don't want to commit a penalty or else your team will have to defend down a player for 2 minutes while you sit there in the box with the penalty timekeeper. And, the power play is typically a good time for a team to score a goal as they have the player advantage. It is something to note that the penalty box is often called the sin bin as well. Moving on from penalties, what about scoring goals? That's the goal of the game, isn't it? Score more goals than your opponent? Well, you simply put the puck in the net, right? It's that easy. Everyone should do it. I don't know why they don't do it more. Well, there's these pesky things called rules that get in the way. For it to be a goal, the puck must completely cross the red goal line I was talking about earlier, to the point where there's space between the puck and the goal line. Once it passes that threshold, it's a goal. It doesn't even have to touch the net. You can't hit a puck with a stick above the height of the crossbar. The stick has to touch the puck below the height of the crossbar in order for it to count as a goal. You often see players try to redirect a shot from long distance with their stick, and sometimes the stick will be too high, and these plays will get reviewed and called no goal, or sometimes they'll be below the height of the crossbar and they'll be good. You also can't intentionally bat or kick a puck into the net with anything other than the stick. If the puck deflects off a player's skate or body, it's fine, but if they're moving their body in such a way that it's clearly an effort to direct the puck into the net with that movement, then that's a no-no. You also can't interfere with the goalie. The goalie has the right to the space in their crease, and you can't prevent them from making a save within it. You also can't run over the goalie. It could be a penalty as well, and the goalie won't be very happy with you, and you might get the other team quite mad at you too if you start hitting their goalie. I've got a few additional items I want to go over as well that should be helpful for new watchers. So pulling the goalie is something you often see late in the game by the trailing team. You can substitute your goalie off for an extra skater and leave your net empty. This gives the team the ability to have another player on the ice to try to score a goal to get their team back into the game or tie the game. And the risk is you leave your net wide open, so if the other team gets the puck and skates down the ice, they have a wide open net to shoot the puck in and expand on their lead. You will also see empty net situations when there's a delayed penalty. So the team that is set to go on the power play will often pull their goalie because play will stop when the other team possesses the puck. So say they pull their goalie, they have an extra skater out there and they turn the puck over. Well, that play is dead because the other team's possessed the puck, and they can't just shoot it into the other net because at that point the whistle's blown. Power play starts, and you move on. Each team has a timeout that they can use at any point in the game, as long as it's during a stoppage in play. You often see this late in the game when it's tied or it's a one-goal game and a team's getting around drawing up the play that they're going to make to try to tie the game or prevent the other team from tying the game. You also see this sometimes in the middle of the game if a team's given up 2-3 goals in a row and the coach kind of wants to settle the team down and get them regrouped. So all goals are reviewed by the league office. What's called the central situation room will call if there's a potential goal that should be disallowed or even a puck that they didn't think went in the net that should be allowed. They can review things like if the puck fully crossed the goal line and it should be a goal or not, if the goalie was interfered with on the play, if there was a missed stoppage, or that sort of thing. And as mentioned earlier, they can also review major penalties. But there are no coaches' challenges in the PWHL like you see in other leagues. And the last thing I want to hit on is the officials. There's 2 referees. They wear purple armbands, and 2 lines persons. They don't wear the purple armbands. They all wear the black and white zebra stripes. But the collective 4 of them are known as officials. It's something I'm weirdly nitpicky about because they'll call them all refs. And in fact, the refs are only the people with the purple armbands. The lines persons are their own people. But they have different things they look for on the ice. Referees are mostly looking for penalties. They're also looking to see if the puck crossed the line for goals. They kind of stand at each end of the ice, near the end boards behind the net. The lines persons stand in the center of the ice, usually in the neutral zone, and they're looking for things like offside and icing and that sort of thing. They usually don't overlap what they're looking for, with a few little exceptions, but they kind of focus on their own thing. But yes, the 4 people on the ice that are not the players, they're the officials, 2 referees and 2 lines persons. So that's it for this video. Next week I'll go more into roster construction, player trades, and how the PWHL standings, playoffs, and draft process works. Please leave any suggestions you have in the comments. If you want me to drill down on anything in a specific video, let me know. I will let you know that I'm planning on doing a video specific to offside and icing. And I'm also going to do a video that's probably stick penalties like hooking, tripping, cross-checking, and then maybe more contact penalties like roughing and boarding and those kind of penalties. And I'm trying to take clips with examples of them just to help you out and see an actual example of those penalties as they are. But any feedback you have is appreciated. If you want to like and subscribe, do so. If you don't, I'm not your dad. You can do whatever you want. But appreciate your time watching this video. I hope everyone has a great day.